have the honor to introduce Pastor Michael D. Green and Lady Candace Laverne Green. This is a couple whose love has been qualified. You are looking at a wife that has embraced the process of becoming a Proverbs 31 woman. You're looking at a husband that has embraced the process of representing Christ in his home. So I pray that you came with an open mind and heart to receive this impartation. I pray that you will leave your truth outside and embrace the truth today so that you will be healed and your marriages will be whole. So without further ado, I will introduce the host, maybe not right now, you know. Okay, the host of Marry Me. Please clap.
I'm so sorry. You know, ever since she brought me from going over there, I've been kind of off. But we thank God. Bless everybody this morning. We thank God for everybody being here. Would you give yourselves a great hand? Praise the Lord. It is our delight to be able to come and share with you guys today. We're looking forward to the interaction that's going to be happening in the next few fleeting moments. Praise God. And so today, first I want to ask a question, and I think it's so important. When we first started out this process of doing marriage ministry, in fact, we were out last night and we were talking to some people about relationships and things of that sort. It's interesting how we approach marriage different than everything else. And this is what I mean. How many of you right now have license to drive? All right. Does anybody have a degree in here? Is anybody certified to function on big machines? All right. For all of those certifications and licenses that you have, before you could get those certifications and licensing, didn't you have to go through a process of learning something about whatever it is you were supposed to operate in, right? What's interesting is that it only costs me $30 to go downtown and get a license for something I did not learn how to have.
My God.
Think about this. Think about this real good. You can get a license for free without having any background knowledge on what you're getting a license for. Does that make any sense? Can I go deeper?
Go deeper.
How many of you are certified to live?
Wow. Live.
Do you have a license to live? Right? And the reason I'm asking this is because many of us, we're living life, but we have not been certified to live life because we don't have the know-how to live life. So before you even get to the marriage component, before you even get to the relationship piece, you don't know how to be in relationship with yourself first, let alone being in relationship with somebody else. Does that make any sense? Is this helping anybody? Because here is where it's supposed to start. Your knowledge of life is supposed to start in your home, right? So if that's the case, then whatever I get out of my home is how I live my life, right? But what if my life or my home is broken, which means the only thing they will be able to teach me is broken knowledge.
Wow.
The information that I would receive in my household that is meant to equip me for life, right, is always going to be incomplete because of the brokenness of the home relationships that matured me or developed me. Does that make any sense to anybody? I don't think we think that far back to get to the root of the problem, because I promise you this, whatever challenges you're having in relationship are all the way back before you ever met the spouse you're married to.
Absolutely.
The problem began in your beginning. And because we're dealing with what's obvious right now, we never trace our steps to our beginning. Does that make any sense? Because how you're raised, it has a great deal of impact on the relationships you will go after, how you will interpret those relationships, how you would define those relationships. And I'm so glad I brought up that word, define, because a lot of us, because we've not been certified in relationship, we don't know how to define relationship. And here's what's crazy. You can't define what you didn't create.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that one more time. You cannot define something you did not create. Does that make any sense? Mm-hmm. Here's what I mean. How many of you all know what the definition of love is? Anybody know what the definition of love? Okay, so if no one in here knows the definition of love, stop telling people you love them. Do you understand what I'm saying? You know what we do? We have an interpretation of love, but not a definition. There's a difference. However I've interpreted love in my lifetime, got it? However I've interpreted, that's how I understand it to be. Just because you interpret it a certain way does not mean it is defined that way. Right. Does that make any sense? Hollywood loves to coin phrases and they love to change the meaning of things. So if you're watching a movie and the woman says, "Make passionate love with me, big boy." I want you to love me. Love me. But yeah, that was back in 1950. That's, the big boy. Come here, big boy. And so we watch the demonstration of her words. We now associate love with sex. It is not. Are y'all hearing me? It is love in a sense, but it is not love in what it was meant by God. Y'all with me? So we have what you call eros love, erotic love, lust, infatuation, fornication. Eros loves, whether y'all realize it or not, if you're not careful, leads to idolatry. Yeah. Did you know that? But when most of us are saying I love you, especially guys, I'll tell you I love you all day if I'm going to get some skin. I'm coming up from the 50s. I'm moving on up. I'm at the 70s and the 80s now.
Right. They know what it means.
Amen. But are you catching what I'm saying? I'll tell you anything if I'm going to get what I want, right? But because we don't know what love means, we only defined it based upon our interpretation of it. Does that make sense? And so we have to begin to go back and learn and define what commitment means, what love means, what these words we always use, I adore you. You don't know what that means. Because if you knew, then your behavior toward each other would be different. You would have to comply to the information of the definition and not the interpretation. Do y'all hear what I'm saying? Does this make any sense to anybody? And so with that being said, I want you to do what we did. When we started having challenges in our relationship, the infidelity was one of the greatest things that could have ever happened in our marriage. Why? Because it forced us to learn. It forced us to learn. First, it forced us to learn how far we were from God. We didn't realize how far off we were from God, especially when God was the creator of relationship. Does that make any sense? You didn't create relationship, God did. Okay. Are y'all hearing me? Which means I need to go to God to understand what relationship means. I need God to define what relationship means, right? When I first started discovering that I was far from God, then I began to connect the dots between God and I. Then we began to connect the dots with her and I. You with me? But it started with me getting back into the presence of God, learning, studying, developing his information as it is written in scripture, right? When I got that understanding, that became the basis for my life and how I was going to love my wife. Do y'all hear what I'm saying? So I had to go to scripture. 1 Corinthians 13 taught me the meaning of what love is. If you're not living up to the definition as Paul wrote it in 1 Corinthians 13 by the Holy Spirit, then you're not definitely loving your mate. And a lot of the issues you got could be resolved if you practice 1 Corinthians 13 and 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Do you hear what I'm saying? Instead of complaining about stuff you won't define. Okay, it's quiet in this Baptist Episcopal Amy Zion Church. So with that being said, we want to give you some wisdom today, and I hope that you will listen to the wisdom of Scripture instead of the wisdom of your feelings. Do y'all hear what I'm saying? Does that make sense? All right, so we're going to bring Sister Nikita. She's going to come back up, and she's going to be the one, she's going to be our moderator today, and she's going to give us our questions and things of that sort. Isn't she lovely? Yes. Come on down. Come on down here. Come on down here. Come on down here. Let these folks see all of this green you got on.
Okay, ready for question one?
Yes.
Okay. What are some things a man should ask himself before he asks a woman to marry him?
Wow.
Wow.
Honey? Oh.
Well, you're the man, so you go first.
I thought y'all females got something to say about it because y'all got something to say about a lot of things. Here's the first thing guys should ask himself. Number one, can I afford it? And here's why that question is so important. Most of you started thinking about money, didn't you? See, that's important, but that's only one piece of the pie. Can you afford it financially? Number two, can you afford it emotionally? Can you afford it psychologically? You follow me? It is marriage or relationships in general are expensive emotionally. And if you're not prepared to be in a relationship, you don't need to do it because you don't have enough in your emotional bank to be in it. Do you hear what I'm saying? So can you afford it? Number two, can you protect it? All right? Can you protect it? And I'm not just talking about, because most men, when they relate to being married, they look at themselves as being the protector of the family. But it's not just about protecting physically. Can you protect your wife emotionally? Psychologically? You with me? Can you protect her feelings? Right? In so doing, you are helping to secure her dynamic, because a woman's major need is to be secure. She was made that way, built that way. You with me? So can you protect her feelings? Can you protect her emotions? Number three, can you provide not only a roof over her head, but can you provide a safe place for her to run to? Can you provide trust? Can you provide wisdom? Can you provide knowledge? Can you provide direction? Right? It's not just money, y'all. Right? It's more than just providing money. It's more than providing a house. Can you provide communication? Are you with me? Because women, they need to express themselves. Right? The next thing is, after provision and protection, can you be the rule or the measure by which everybody else in the house measures themselves? You are the standard bearer of your home. So when you have kids, they're going to need a reference to measure themselves, boy and girl. They're going to need a reference to measure themselves. Are you that measure? Are you hearing what I'm saying? Does that make sense? And the last but not least, you are the prophet of the home. So what is God speaking to you about your home? Don't think that you have to have all the answers, because you don't have all the answers. That was a myth brought on by the arrogance of men to keep people subverted under them. Men don't, you're not meant to know everything. You can't. That's why you got help. Because you don't know everything. Do you understand what I'm saying? I want to deliver every man in here from feeling the need to have all the answers when you don't have them. That forces you to lie to your spouse and say things like, I know what I'm doing, when you really don't. How can you know what you're doing when you've never seen it done or you've never done it yourself? There are some places, watch this, here's something you need to catch about leadership. All leaders, or not all leaders, but most leaders who lead have never been where they're leading people. Don't believe that either. Don't believe that you have to have already been where you're leading folk. Abraham had never been where God led him. But then when he got there, he had to lead people to a place where he had never been himself. And he had to tell them, I'm just following God. But if you as a man don't have a relationship with God, you are not following anything but yourself. And that can frustrate the relationship, because you don't know if your wife has the cachet or the capacity or the capability to endure several mistakes on your part, because you won't consult the wisdom of God in following his lead. Does that make any sense? All right, honey.
I only have two. The first one is, as a man, you should ask yourself, do you have a vision? Do you have a vision for the family? Pastor and I never discussed what the vision was, but I knew he had a vision because he lived in prayer. And so I could see that I could trust him with me because he was a praying man. And he was going to trust God to carry us wherever he wanted to go. So if you're not married, the first thing you should ask yourself is, do I have a vision? Where am I carrying the family? Where are we going? And anybody knows that if a woman don't know where she's going to get in the driver's seat. And she's going to get to driving. So that's the first thing. I think the other thing, man, that you should ask yourself is, am I ready to share my world?
That's good.
Am I ready to share my world? And again, all of what we're telling you outside of Scripture is things that we went through, our experiences. We got married, but I don't think Pastor ever thought about, wow, I'm going to have to pull away from my isolation place, because he liked being alone. You know, he read alone, prayed alone, did everything alone. And now he said, I do.
Right.
And then we get in the house and he back in the other room. And so are you ready to share your world? Are you ready to pull away from football a little bit? Are you ready to pull away from whatever you enjoy doing the most to share your world with your wife? And then don't even talk about the children. That's more time you got to pull away. Amen. And it does not mean that you won't be able to do those things. It just means I have a person in my life now. And so I have to compromise the time I would spend alone looking at TV or alone doing cars, whatever you like to do, and share some time with my woman. So sharing your world, are you ready for that?
I want to put this last piece on here. Are you willing to work? I'm gonna tell you, a terrible combination is being lazy and married. And I'm not just talking about working a job. I'm talking about working at the relationship. Not only working at the relationship, but working on you. You feel me? If you're lazy about your own personal development, you'll be lazy about the relationship. You with me? And you might be a great worker. You might go to work every day, you're on time, you come home, clock, whatever. But when you get home, you're not engaged at all. So are you willing to work on the relationship, i.e. working on yourself? Yes, ma'am.
How do you...
Turn what?
Fixing that. How do we create a new culture together instead of forcing our old one-sided culture on one another?
I have one word. I just talked about this in a seminar this weekend. Humility. Humility. We're not humble enough. It's not even fair for me to, whether my culture was, if I was still home, the culture of my household, how we ran the house, you know, how my mom, because we pick up whomever we're under. And so the way your mom and dad trained you, that's your culture. And so how fair is it for me to bring that whole culture into our relationship? That means you bring nothing to the table. Like, you got to leave some of that, whatever doesn't work, you leave that back at home. If you built if you moved out and you were in your own place, you built a culture in your own place. You did things a certain way. Well, when you invite another person in that, now you got to merge the cultures and spit out whatever doesn't work for your culture. And so it's humility. It's saying, you know what, this just doesn't work for us. And talking about that, communicating about this just isn't good for our marriage. So let's not do this. And agree to let it go. You see it's tearing up the marriage, so let it go. So humility.
That also coincides with what we shared a few years ago here, merging differences. Everybody's bringing baggage, bringing experiences, bringing different things from our backgrounds to the relationship, right? So when we do that, we need to put all that stuff on the table. This is what we believe about this. This is what we think about that. However, what are we trying to build? That goes back to vision. How are we going to build this? And respecting our differences of opinion right? And understanding that opinion is not truth. So don't treat it as such. Opinion is not absolute. So don't treat it as such, right? So once we put all of these things on the table and we respect the differences, then we got to negotiate those differences. What do we need, as my wife just forestated, what do we need to pull from those things that are good that will help add to the household or the family or the marriage we're trying to build? We negotiate those differences. Yeah, I said negotiate, because right now we're doing a business deal. You follow what I'm saying? So after we negotiate those differences, now we have to employ the difference, which means whatever we agree on, that's what we need to stand by, right? So that means that whatever we have accepted as being the modus operandi of our relationship, that both of us must hold each other accountable to doing what we agreed to do. You with me? And you got to let me hold you accountable, which means you got to let me correct you should I see something we did not discuss. Otherwise, we need to go back to the table and see if we can negotiate this issue that you keep bringing up. Does that make any sense? So that means communication is necessary. So you got to employ the difference. Once you employ it, man, then you can begin to celebrate the difference, because you'll see the results of your merging those differences. Is this making any sense to anybody? Is this helping you? So that's how you create a new culture. But here's the other thing about a new culture. New people. Old people can't create nothing new. So you as an individual have to be different. Old things are passed away, and behold, all things are what? Become new. I am a new creation in Christ Jesus. Old things are passed away. Got it? So you got to know to let go of some old ideations, old ideas, concepts, precepts, some things that you've learned from your parents that were relevant in that day but not relevant in this day. The worst thing you could ever be is irrelevant to your own marriage. And that's another teaching piece. Are you hearing me? That's one of the worst things you could ever be, is irrelevant to your own relationship. Does that make sense? All right. Did you guys have any questions about what we're sharing? Anybody? You said it's real quiet, saints. They're just listening. All right.
What are some of the dangers of not forgiving quickly?
Wow. What are some of the dangers of not forgiving quickly? Honey, you want to jump in that water?
I think one of the dangers is you start planting seeds of bitterness. And the more bitter you become, the more skewed your vision is. So you could have not forgiven for one thing, and the next thing come up, and your anger is amped because you didn't resolve the last thing. You cannot. The Bible says to get over things as quickly as possible. That means you got to work at saying, you know what? I got to get this thing up. I can't hold on to this, because it only gets worse with time. And before you know it, for lack of a better term, you become a monster. You know, and your spouse is like, I can't say nothing. I can't do nothing. Everything, she just snaps. He just goes off. Like, it gets worse. And so you got to give up that thing. And the way you give it up is to talk about it. Mm-hmm. So those are the hard conversations, because you're going to have to share some things that you want to share. Then you have to be patient and wait for him or her to respond to whatever you're saying. Sometimes we can get our stuff out, but we ain't ready for what's coming back.
Wow.
Because you don't know what's coming back.
Right.
But it's important to forgive and don't let it pile up, because it really does become a mountain in your life. And before you know it, we at the courts talking about irreconcilable differences when the only thing we didn't do is forgive. Yeah. So
the word forgive in the Bible literally means to send away. It doesn't mean that you're not guilty. Mm-hmm. It just means that I will not hold the offense against you. Mm-hmm. So the what is the word I want to use? The consequence of your decision to do something that offended me, I now dismiss that. All right? I send it away so that you can go free. Now, the thing about forgiveness is it qualifies your love. Don't tell me you love me if you can't forgive me. The crux of our salvation is based upon the mercy and the grace and the forgiveness of God toward us. So Jesus says something like, as I have forgiven you, so forgive others. Let me go back and say that one more time, because some of y'all were looking around. Jesus says, as I have forgiven you, I want you to forgive others. Then in another moment, he says, as I have loved you, died on the cross, died for you, I want you to love your neighbor, right? So that means that my forgiving you is killing me. Okay, it just got quiet in here. Forgiving you is killing me, right? And the reason why it needs to kill me so that I can be resurrected anew. Does that make any sense? Is this helping anybody yet? So understand that you're not really ready for a relationship, those of you who are single, if you have forgiveness issues. Because if you, watch this, if you won't forgive your mother, you won't forgive your spouse.
Good.
If you won't forgive your father, you won't forgive your spouse, because that's a trend. Do y'all hear what I'm saying? If you are not forgiving, if you're not forgiving of your siblings, you're not going to be forgiving of the person you're married to, because that's a behavior that you have. And God is telling you, watch this, that I want you to forgive so it frees you. Watch this. You think it's freeing them. It is freeing them, but it's really dealing with you.
Yeah.
Are y'all hearing what I'm saying? For the reasons that my wife just shared, so that bitterness won't sit in your heart. Because the moment you start allowing bitterness to come in your spirit and resentment to get in your spirit, then it affects your health.
Jesus.
So forgiveness is healing for you physically. Do y'all hear what I'm telling you? And so what the enemy wants, he wants to cause you to rationalize being mad forever. He reasons within your mind, because sin is reasonable. Demons are reasonable. It makes sense to be mad. It makes sense to be mean. How long you gonna be mean though? This happened 10 years ago. And I'm still paying the price for it? Really? Come on, man. That ain't righteous. Yes, ma'am. Oh, I thought you had a...
Oh, I was just too late. I had a question.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No,
Okay.
go.
Can you walk us through how forgiveness look in a practical way? Because I feel like oftentimes, especially in the church context, it's give it to God, let it go. But how does that look like on Monday? If you're dealing with someone that has done the same, like it's the same thing you're dealing with, and it's like, okay, I know, forgive, and we do the 7 times 70 and all of that. But how does that look? Because a lot of times, I know for me, I think if I forgive you, that there's no emotion associated with the offense, you know, when I think about it. So if they do the same thing, let's say, again, in a short time span, it's like, okay, I thought I forgave you, but, you know, start to feel some things in the chest area. So how does that look in a practical way? That's the first part of it. And what happens when you've been on this journey so long that you've been unforgiving for years? So it's a lot to let go of. Like it's almost like you have to learn. How do you learn how to forgive? I guess that's what I'm saying.
Number one, you got to get delivered from fear. Because that's what keeps the unforgiveness going.
Right.
The fear of being hurt again. If somebody offends you, all right, and they hurt you deeply, all right, number one, the Bible says first natural, then spiritual. So number one, feel what you feel. You are valid in feeling what you feel. All right, I want you to first understand that, because you're human. You're going to be angry. You're going to be mad. You're going to be frustrated. All right. But the Bible says be angry, but sin not, which means that even though someone did something to you, that doesn't give you the right to go out and do something against them. Then it becomes tit for tat, and you create this warfare in your relationship. So now you got to be willing to feel what you feel, process what you feel and how it's affecting you. Separate it from them completely. Got it? Get rid of them completely. Just deal with what's coming up as a result of it. That's what I did. When my wife and I went through what we went through, and I had to process my feelings, the devil was telling me, she cheated on you, you go cheat on her. And it made sense to my flesh to go do that. And I was even tempted. I even got up and got dressed to go do something. However, I didn't do it, because then my spirit came to the rescue and says, think about consequence. Flesh never thinks about consequence. It only seduces you to make choices. Y'all got to hear what I'm saying. And now you're going to have to pay for whatever your flesh, whatever the check your flesh wrote. So feel what you feel, be responsible and accountable to that dynamic. And then once you do that, you then have to confront that part of yourself that you didn't know was there until they offended you. That's why God let them offend you. You missed it. You thought it was about some emotional dynamic going on, but you got to slow your emotions down enough to process what you're feeling and thinking in relationship to what they've done, to see, wow, God let this happen because I didn't know this about myself. I didn't know I was a lech until I was put in that position to have these feelings. So what I'm seeing now, I'm in the fire. And God is allowing the dross to come up to the front. So now I got to deal with that before I can even get to this. You with me? So now, once I confront the feeling, once I confront the feeling, now I have to be willing to forgive, which means I need to know what that means. As I said before, it means to send away. All right? Now, I'm going to send this away, so forgiveness is not an emotion. Got it? It's a decision. It is a judgment call. Now, the judgment call to forgive you, watch this, does not change your behavior at all. I've gone to the judge and I have stood before the courts and the man forgave me for doing reckless driving and walked right out and started reckless driving again. So forgiveness and mercy doesn't change me. But we have an expectation that if I forgave you, how could you do this again? I never corrected what was wrong. You see what I'm saying? So now it becomes your responsibility, because you're in relationship with me, not to leave me to myself, but to hold me accountable to changing and becoming better. That's when you determine and define whether or not they will do it again because of their need to work it out within themselves. If they're not willing to make the appropriate adjustments and modifications to be their better self in the relationship, that's when you will learn.
So let me put close on what he just said, because that's where I was getting ready to go. When we went through the situation that we went through, the calling and the texting did not stop. It didn't stop. But I had to work my way through getting past that. And what helped me with that was that he wasn't on my shoulder. Who you talking to? Who you talking about? He wasn't over my shoulder doing that. Once he forgave me, and then gave time for me to process myself from one place to another. It wasn't a miracle, y'all. It wasn't a miracle. Like, it didn't just stop. I had to process myself out of using other people or my vices when I didn't like what was going on with my marriage. So he gave me space to walk it out. Like, when you forgive somebody, like he said, they don't just change. You're just freeing yourself. That's what you're doing. Then you give them time to respond to the forgiveness. And so he gave me time for that. And up to today, he don't look at my phone. He doesn't do any of that, because I'm a wow. I'm a grown woman.
All right.
Hallelujah.
We'll just fill in the spaces.
I'm a grown woman that had to make a decision. I had to be accountable to God for my soul. He couldn't change my soul. He couldn't change what I did. I had to make a decision that God was important enough to me to honor first him, myself, and then my marriage. Mature and apt. That's what the marriage is for. Those that are mature and apt. And you got to grow to some places. Sometimes you don't start there.
No.
But you have to grow to that place. And so forgiveness has nothing to do. Him forgiving me was everything about him.
Right.
I just had to make a decision to forgive myself.
Right. And we don't bring up what we resolve.
And he doesn't remind me of it at all. Never threw it in my face. I don't care how many wonderful arguments we've had. He never throws it in my face. And the question I always ask is why? Why do we bring up people's past? What is that going to positively do to the relationship? How is that going to help the relationship if you remind me of what I did? Because if you remind me too much, I might start thinking about it. You got to be wise.
Yeah, that was good. Did that help?
Amen. Pray
Last
on.
question. It's often like in conversation with my peers, is like, okay, I keep forgiving for the same thing, so I feel stupid or like I'm settling in the relationship. Promise that's my last piece with that. Could you speak to that? Like how to get beyond feeling, maybe it's a millennial thing, I don't know, but feeling like, oh, if I keep forgiving you for the same thing and allowing that space for you to resolve within yourself to grow, that I'm somehow doing myself an injustice for staying in that situation in which I have to forgive for the same thing over and over again.
Here's what that person doesn't consider. All of the things that you do over and over again that they have to forgive. Yeah. And that's the problem, that we look at forgiveness one-sided. And it's not one-sided. So just like you have to forgive me for being a repeat offender, there's some things you do, and my wife and I were talking about this a couple weeks ago. I said, there's some things that you do I never bring to your attention. Ticks me off, bothers me. But I don't bring it to your attention, but because men are not that expressive. We can absorb more than you can. Emotionally, some things we can absorb a lot more than you can. You just vocal about what you are fed up about. We've been holding this for 3 years.
Yeah.
You know why? Because this is how we're made different. Because we're made in the image of God. We're made after the glory of God, right? So God says, when I forgive you, I throw it in the sea of forgiveness. Once we experience what we feel about whatever, we're done with it. Y'all chew on it. No, really. Because forgiveness for a man is different than forgiveness for a female. Because women chew on it, right? We keep masticating it in our spirit, in our soul. We keep meditating on it even though it's over.
Come on.
And that's why it keeps coming up in conversation, because you're not done with it. And I don't know what more you want to do with it, because you've chewed all out of it that you can.
All the juice is gone.
And what happens is you start chewing on something else. And you mix that with what has already been in your mouth. Do you hear what I'm saying? And it keeps mounting and keeps mounting. You keep chewing on something new, keep chewing on something new. And it's interesting that we're good at pointing out the flaws of others. And to do that, you've got to ignore your own. To criticize me is to forget about what your flaws are. Do you understand what I'm saying? So there's always this one-sided way we look at it when it's really two sides. You got to always be cognizant, because this is something God gave me when I was going through what I was going through. God says, how would you feel if you were your wife? I said, what do you mean? If I was my wife, I'm not my wife. He said, exactly, you're not her. So how would you feel if you were her and she had done, or you had done to her what she did to you? How much mercy do you think you deserve? How much grace do you desire? And it changed my whole perspective, and it helped me to walk away from what took place. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because now I'm seeing the fact that I need my wife to trust me to forgive her. Do you hear me? Because trust is on both sides, right? You broke the trust because you offended me. Yeah, I did. But now I want to see how strong your trust is in forgiving me. I'm trusting that you can handle the weight of my flaw, right? Even if I do it again, that's where the accountability comes with my wife. That wherever she allows me to help her hold up the standard of not going back to that old behavior, then we can move forward. The problem comes when we don't confront what brought us to that point in the first place. Why did you cheat, right? Then once we learned why she cheated, I realized that I was culpable. She wasn't receiving from me what was deserving of her. And somebody else, the enemy knows how to step in there. The enemy put somebody in place of me in her heart because I wasn't doing what I was supposed to do. You see what I'm saying? So now I'm culpable. Now she should have been righteous enough, saved enough to keep herself chaste and all that kind of wonderful stuff. But however, that wasn't her level of maturity in God. You see what I'm saying? So now you're dealing with a whole other variable, because you're now dealing with the maturity of the individual versus the maturity of the individual in God, their relationship with God, and all that kind of stuff is coming into play. You see what I'm saying? So because we wanted to have I was really looking to divorce. She came to me and said, I want the marriage. Now, me and my sarcastic way was, in my head, I said, you couldn't, because look what you've done. You see what I'm saying? I didn't say that out my mouth, though. She wanted to keep the marriage. So that made me, if you're going to work, I'm going to work. Right. If you're going to fight, I'm going to fight. Because you can't fight alone. You can't go to counseling by yourself. You can't change yourself and I stay the same. We'll be right back in the same boat. So we were both culpable in the situation. That's what folk don't realize about infidelity. Sometimes the infidelity is relative to both individuals.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Once your husband steps into his mandate, calling, positioning.
Hold on.
Oh, I'm sorry. We got a question.
Yes, going back to the discussion we just had, so
Yes.
often you hear myself and a lot of my other peers said the same thing. You constantly hear, you can't say X, Y, and Z to a man because of his ego. Or you can't say this, you can't say that. You have to be careful how you talk to a man. And you hear that so much, and then as a woman on the reciprocated side, well, that's not fair, because, you know, now you're telling me to tame my tongue, forgive, don't say this, don't say that. You can't say this because you'll hurt a man's ego. You'll emasculate him. You'll hurt his ego. You'll drive him away. You'll send him this. So it gets to a point where you feel we're so restricted. Like, well, what can I say? Because and I may have been the only person that heard that, but it was beat on me so hard for so long, like to the point where you feel defenseless. Like, so now I can't say nothing, and I gotta forgive, and I just gotta sit here and cook dinner and make sure your plate is good. So, like, what do you have to say to that?
Well, it depends on what you have to say to the man. You understand what I'm saying? Because for that everything you just said, what are you going to tell him? He's offended you. He's hurt you. What you going to say? That's going to be tamed and respectful and responsible. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because in that moment, most women, because you have the gift of gab, you can tear a man down to his bone. No skin left on, no marrow, no blood, nothing. He's just skin and bones. He's just bone. Because you know how to dismantle him, because everything you were feeling before the offense justifies you saying everything you wanted to say that you've been holding back. So now your tongue, the Bible says, is a fire, and you burn him up because you don't know how to control your anger. Do you follow what I'm saying? So that's why when my wife told me what she had done, I didn't say a word, because I'm mindful of something, that what I say will chart the trajectory of the relationship from this moment. So I don't want to speak too hastily. Some of us, we speak too fast and we speak too much. And we're not saying the righteous thing when we are offended. And I'm talking about men and women. Do you see what I'm saying? And so if you are responsible enough to communicate properly in that moment without...
You can say.
And there's some things you can say.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about what you just said is men feel the same thing about women. Because if I say what I really want to say to you, oh my God, all hell is about to be unleashed. Now, brothers, don't look at her. Just look straight at me. Just look straight at me. I already know. There's some things you can't say to a woman that she has the freedom to say to you, and you take it easier and better than her. Amen. Are you hearing me? So it's the same on both sides. But in relationship to what you're sharing about you personally, you have to be willing to take responsibility for how the damage that you can give to a person by what you say, no matter how mad you are.
And most of the time, I just want to I see you. Most of the time, those of us that can rip a person up one side and down the other can't take nothing.
Can't take it.
You get offended at the least thing.
You would leave us while we would stay with you.
I know a couple that will remain nameless. They don't go here, so don't start looking around the room. that the, yes, nameless, that the wife has for years emasculated. And I personally watched the man say one thing that wasn't even, it was just like that, didn't even pinch her. And she left the house screaming and hollering. And I'm thinking, all these years you've been saying exactly what you want to say. And I said one thing, and you just lose it. We can't even handle what we give. So it's a choice. Okay, if you want to rip them up and emasculate them, are you ready to be ripped up too? Who wants that? So you can say something, but you got to learn to tame it. You may be an individual that have always been able to say what you want to say, and ain't nobody knock your lights out. You know what I'm saying? So you think it's off to be tamed.
Right.
To tame your tongue.
Right.
But I don't want anything from him, that I can't give him. I want our communication to be the same. We both respect each other.
Yeah.
That's really what it should be. So if you need to learn to tame, learn to tame your tongue.
Even in
You're not going to be okay, and God is not going to smile on anybody that says whatever they want to say on either side.
Because every word, you're going to be judged for every word. The Bible says for every word that comes out of your mouth, you're going to be condemned or justified by what you say. And God is writing everything you saying to your husband, and everything you're thinking about your husband, and everything you're telling people about your husband.
Wow.
Because the truth, here's the other part that we need to talk about. The truth of the matter, what's coming out your mouth is really what's in your heart anyway. So if you really love me, the offense only brings out the truth of what's in me concerning you. So when my wife shares with me what she shares with me, I was mindful of what I had to say out of my mouth because I loved her. So even when we went through what we went through, I covered her. That's a biblical principle, and I think that's the part we're missing. I haven't heard a reference of Bible yet from anyone in your consternation about your relationship. Do you understand what I'm saying? So it's a lot of emotion and a lot of feeling, but not enough to back. Where you get that from? Who taught you that? Which brings me back to the beginning of what we talked about. Who gave you license to talk like this to me? My mama. Well, baby, I ain't your daddy, so you ain't coming at me like your mama.
Because that was my problem. I was very aggressive. All my sisters, we're just aggressive. My aunts, everybody, just aggressive. Everybody talking real hard. So when he came to me and was like, who you talking to? I was like, what? He was like, you don't talk to me like that. And then I started noticing, like, why am I talking like that? And I realized that that's how my culture. That's how everybody talked. And the men didn't say nothing. They just went outside and digged in the trunk. You know what's in the trunk. And they come back red in the face. They was medicating them attitudes. That's what they did. But Pastor won't go into the trunk. He was like, you ain't gonna talk to me like that. That's what's gonna happen here. And so I had to learn to talk to him with respect. Honor him, love him. And that changed his attitude towards me. And I'm just looking at you because you asked the question. I'm not. Yeah. No, I'm serious. But yeah, I had to learn how to talk to Pastor. I can't talk to him any kind of way. And then we expecting love and them to treat us a certain way while we ripping them apart. It's not going to happen.
Well, you can't talk to anybody any kind.
Right. Anybody.
Yeah. Anybody. All right, Jackie.
Real quick, Jackie.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks. So, can you put it right there? Thank you. You said something that I was kind of concerned about, and I don't know if it's because I'm a millennial or I'm a woman in reference to men and how they forgive, how they just take things. And I'm sitting here like, okay, I'm a millennial. Like most of the guys that I have seen, they're very, I don't know how to say, like verbal. So I'm kind of scared when you say, oh, we just don't say anything, because I'm thinking, okay, maybe one day, like, I might drop a pencil and he snap, okay? Like, I don't know. I just noticed, I guess maybe in the office where I work,
or even outside, like people can only take but so much. And especially with the rise of people having PTSD and depression and things like that, I feel as though if you feel some type of way, you should say it. But going back with Ryan's comment, like, I don't know how to say it. So how would we, with biblical wisdom, express the things we're feeling and not have it build up to the point where, because I always feel like it's going to build up and it's going to show up involuntarily, like if not with your words, then through your actions somewhere.
Okay, well, let me help you with this.
Okay.
Number one, you can't control my response. Whenever you're having a conversation with anybody, you can't control responses. That's the first thing. Number two, build your vocabulary. Okay? I read a lot. I read the dictionary every day because I have emotions. All right? And so I need to be able to put my emotions to words so that I can successfully communicate what it is I'm trying to articulate and what I'm feeling, right? So I have to make sure that my presentation is in step. Now, once my presentation is in step, I can't control how you react to it or respond to it, right? My only job is to share with you my concern at the time. If you go off, that's on you. But that doesn't mean I have to go off with you. Right? One thing my father taught me is that two dummies can't be in a fight and win. Okay? So somebody has to remain sober-minded enough to know when to stop the arguing. You with me? And I never have a conversation with a statement. I never start with a statement. I start with a question. Questions always disarm people because it makes them think about their answer before they speak. To make a statement suggests that you already have the answer and I don't need you to give me one. So there's an arrogance with the statement. There's a humility with the question.
Very good. I think the third thing is to consider your friends. You can be around a group of girls that be like, honey, read him his rights, but then you can be around a matured group that will help you through the situation. Same with guys. They'd be like, whoop him in place, doc. And you go try to whoop him in place and you come out with scratches, Get around mature people that will give you sound wisdom.
Right.
Because you are the product of the closest 5 people around you.
Absolutely.
So get around some mature people.
Yeah.
Great answers. Once your husband steps into his mandate, calling, position in the home, how do you step back and support him when your norm has been to lead, make decisions without consulting him, etc.? What does true submission look like?
Humility is my favorite word today. That transition from leading to following, whatever the situation is, wherever you had to lead in the home for a while. Personal reference, my dad was an alcoholic. And so, you know what that meant. He was out, he worked, but then after that, it was party time. And so my mom led the home for years. She had to make the decisions, she had to pay the bills, she had to do everything until he really gave God his life. And so that transition required a lot of wisdom, a lot of closed mouth, because she had led for years. So she could have easily said, you weren't around, but what is that helping? This man just gave his heart to Christ. Now you have to be humbled and patient through the process of him taking his place in the home. I ain't gonna say it's easy, but use wisdom in that. Allow him to lead. Don't just say, don't do it that way, do it this way. If you hadn't been here, you go there quick. You go there quick. And so you have to be wise, patient, loving, caring. If God thought it not robbery to embrace his heart and receive him in, why can't you? Patience.
Here's the other dynamic too, just to add to it. It goes back to defining what submission is. The word submission literally means to obey. All right? That's what it really means. Obey means to hear. It's to listen. A woman cannot successfully obey, brothers, if you have not given her a mission to hear. If you ain't talking nothing, I can't submit to anything. So submission is not her cleaning your clothes. Submission is not her just cooking your meals. That's the shallow end of the pool. You follow me? And that's really ain't even submission.
Right.
That's what you ought to do out of love. Right? I don't make my wife wash my clothes. She washes them because they dirty. And she don't wash hers alone. She washes everybody's in the whole family. You understand what I'm saying? Some of us still think single. You got to think married. Us. Not I. We. Us. So submission is, brothers, you got to have vision enough, mission enough to communicate, hey, this is where we're going. We're going to buy a house in 5 years. So now she submits to the vision. Right? She says yes to the vision. But not without giving you counsel as being the helpmate. Giving you wisdom. What's the best course of action? You've given me vision. Now let's chart the course of action. That's something you do together. You follow what I'm saying? Then she's able to, she has a role to fulfill. And she's submitted to that dynamic. The other thing about submission is it's positional. Because to be submitted means that you are under me. The reason being so that you can be productive. You can't receive unless you are submitted. Hearing is being submitted. Are you with me? Because in order for you to hear what I'm saying, you got to be submitted to the person speaking to you. Does that make any sense to anybody? So here it is. If she's submitted to me, we call this a sexual position, submitted, a missionary position is a submitted position so that you can get pregnant. If she's going to be on top of you, there's no pregnancy, that's just pleasure. Boy, y'all real quiet now. You're talking about purpose, right? One of the purposes of relationship is the future. So we're going to have children, right? So there's certain positions you got to get in to get pregnant. And the best positions to get in to get pregnant is a submitted position. Because gravity needs to pull the seed to the egg. Y'all so nasty. Do you understand what I'm saying? A lot of the other positions are purely about pleasure and not purpose. Do you understand what I'm saying now? Are y'all catching this? So if you're trying to have a future, submission is the key. You can't get nothing out of me if you're not submitted. You get more from a man submitted than you do when you're not. And if you're not submitted, he shuts up and you don't get no seed. And I'm not just talking about semen now, I'm talking about seed, words. He will not communicate to a person who's not submitted.
That's good.
He'll communicate to somebody. He'll give that pleasure to somebody else. Because you won't listen. Men don't talk to women that don't listen. Oh, he might be talking to you, but he ain't really telling you what's in his heart. He's giving that to his boys. Or someone who presents themselves in your stead. Here's a problem. When God first made man, he gave man rib cage, right? The ribs are there to protect the organs of the body, right? Before he makes the woman, he pulls a piece of the rib out and creates the woman out of the rib. Now, the rib that he pulls out is the part of the rib that covered the heart. That's what he made a woman from. So he made a woman to protect the heart of the man. Why? Because the Bible says that in a man's heart is his treasure. So the rib is supposed to protect the treasure that is in his heart, which is really what's going to come out of his mouth. So watch this. If that rib does not possess that position to protect his heart, then somebody else will stand in your stead and begin to get the treasure that belongs to you. Does that make any sense to anybody? All because they're willing to listen. It may sound silly, but listen. You don't even have to agree, but at least listen. Does that make any sense? And the other part about leading and following. All great leaders are followers. The problem is not following him. The problem is trusting him.
Right.
So submission is not the only issue. It is the trust issue you have. And if you got a trust issue with him, especially when he's not done anything to challenge that, then you got control issues, which is a deeper issue than lacking submission.
You got 2 questions. Oh.
Anybody had a question?
Oh, I thought.
Oh, okay. So I hear what you're saying about submission is listening, but what does that look like? Is it just, I feel like listening is just kind of vague.
Giving credence to what I have to say because it's me speaking.
What does that mean?
Giving respect and honor to listen to what I have to say, whatever my concern is. If I'm casting vision for the family, don't dismiss it because it's not your idea. Don't dismiss my decision to do something because you think that there's a better way to do it than what I'm offering you right now. Does that make any sense? Listen to what I have to say before you dismiss it. Don't dishonor my position because you disagree. You have the right to disagree, but you don't have the right to dismiss me either. And some women can be dismissive because it ain't what they think it ought to be. Some of this is difficult for you to understand because you're single. But when you get married, it'll make a whole lot more sense to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
No problem. All right.
Good? Okay. How do you teach your spouse to please you sexually without making them feel insecure?
All right. Go ahead, girl.
I think it starts with having good communication from the start. When you're already able to talk to your spouse, you know, and you all understand each other, it's not hard once you're in the bedroom because it makes sense. And you know that that person isn't coming from a negative standpoint. If that is a problem in your relationship, then what you say, like, move over, you know, it's the way you say things sometimes. Get up, just get up, you know. You know, those are things that will definitely make someone feel insecure.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful in how you're communicating, what you're communicating, because it's like, he starts to feel like, well, I can't do nothing right. Or she feels like, I can't do anything right.
Exactly.
Because of the...
I'm just playing. I'm sorry.
Oh,
No, I'm not talking about you. No, I ain't talking about you.
Clean it up.
Watch the spirit.
That's all I have for that, honey.
No, but I do think it's you don't need to wait until you're in the bed to be having that conversation. We need to have that discussion over coffee and a donut, and express, hey, ask, have you ever considered trying this? See, there go that question again. You see what I'm saying? That's how you teach them. Have you ever considered doing this? I really like it when you do this. And when you touch my breast this way, if you just move over this way. You know what I'm saying? You have to have those conversations. I'm sorry, thank you, honey, because, you know, it gets real graphic. But those are the kind of conversations you got to have before you get into those moments, so that when he gets in there, he's got a game plan of how to approach the moment. And then you got to tell him whether or not, some women don't require the foreplay. Some women just like to jump right into it, and some women like the foreplay. So explain to him how. And I get the end part without him feeling insecure. Start with the questions. What do you think about trying this? Or what do you think about doing this? Because in that case, it doesn't insinuate you don't know what you're doing. You understand what I'm saying? At least you don't know what you're doing with me. I don't know who you had before me, but this ain't working. It's somebody, they just ain't told you. Amen. But since we're going to do life together, I need to tell you, because your foot is too big. Just move it over that way.
I think. Ooh, y'all tickle Saint. I think the important thing too for singles is that we don't compare, because once you move over to the other side where you said I do, that's who you have now, and you can't compare whom you've had to who you have now.
Right. And
that's important.
And you ain't supposed to be having nobody.
Right. But we know that's different in 2020.
But you still ain't supposed to be having nobody.
I mean, I agree with that. But you just have to be careful that you're not comparing, because you're getting your marriage, and if you're unhappy, then your body will still be looking for the last thing.
Right.
And so it's very important that once you say, that's why saying I do is so important, and thinking about every consequence before you say I do.
Yeah.
Every consequence. And so in this context, sex. Because you ain't going to be, you're not supposed to be dipping in and out once you say I do.
Absolutely.
So you have to talk about those things. I'm more hands-on. So let's get in here. Let's find out what you need to do, And I tell you then, let's modify this. Let's move on to the next question.
I'm trying to told you.
Okay, Nikita.
We're still on sex. Should you?
I thought we got away.
Should you feel required to have sex with your spouse when you don't want to, simply because you're married?
Well, you probably don't need to get married. That would be a bad idea. The Bible says, do not defraud your spouse except for when you're consecrating. And in that, you have to have a conversation to make sure that they are in agreement with your consecration, because in consecration, you're not supposed to be having sex. And so if sex is a problem and you don't want to have it a lot, then you perhaps need to just be celibate. Yeah.
And I think not to go so far to the left, if you are, not feeling well, or, sometimes we do have arguments, and the other person, then they want to come grin in your face, and the argument is not resolved, that can be a problem. But you need to have a conversation about that.
Right.
When you start saying, do you feel required, to have sex, like there's a problem in that. There's a problem.
Yeah. And
so we need to be talking about what that problem is. Because I don't know anybody on God's green earth that don't like it.
Amen.
Bless God.
Boy, we got some wonderful musicians.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. Because what you don't want to do is create an avenue or an opportunity for your spouse to be, once again, because the devil is watching your marriage too. And so the demons are making reports. She hasn't had any in 60 months or 60 days.
How about say
90 days. But I'm telling you that there are people out here, at my old church, the prophet came and she was prophesying to one of the women, and she said, listen, you need to give your husband some sex. And her husband shouted out in the back, yes! And the Lord had revealed to the prophet he hadn't had sex in a year.
It's bad when he got to reveal it to the prophet.
And unfortunately, that is the case among some people. And we don't know why she did not feel it, because some people, after they have children, they lose that stamina or that desire for sex. You don't know what the case may be. But then some people, they get used to not having it because they don't need it. But you don't think about the need of the other person, because everybody's sexual appetites nowadays are different. And so you've got to make sure that communication stays open in that, because a lot of men, they're sexually frustrated. They just ain't saying nothing. Once again, men aren't going to talk if they feel like they're going to be shot down. So.
When passion, desire, chemistry has died due to emotional pain, how does one do things that require passion, desire, or chemistry? Example,
It's your question, huh?
There is no trust due to habitual lying. There is a lack of security due to constant disappointment and unmet communicated expectation. How does one initiate sex then? How does one have sex passionately? How does one initiate or enjoy affection, like cuddling and kissing?
I think the first thing is, man, you got to get healed from whatever your pain is, because that's going to always be in the way of the chemistry. It's going to always be in the way of your desire. And that means if it's gotten to this state, then that means you have suppressed and suppressed and suppressed over time, and you have a mountain of unresolved pain and issues, and obviously the wound is still open to where you're unable to psychologically engage and emotionally engage in the relationship. So the first thing I think you ought to do is get healed from whatever the pain is and move forward and get yourself in a position where you can now recover the relationship. But it ain't gonna happen until you deal with that unresolved pain.
Yeah, that's like walking down the street with a
gaping sore in your arm and not attending to it. Like, for your arm to work properly, you have to get that thing healed. And so, my concern here is that why are we even trying to have sex if you're broken like that? Why aren't we talking about it? Like, there's something that needs to be talked about here. Yeah. And a lot of times we don't talk because we feel like the person isn't going to respect how we feel. Like, there's a problem in why you feel like you can't be open. Emotional pain is dangerous.
Did you know that emotional and physical pain resonate from the same place in the mind and body?
Yes.
So whatever you're feeling emotionally is the same as if you're feeling it physically, and what you're feeling physically is the same pain you feel emotionally. Did you know that? So if physical pain is treated and treatable, then emotional pain is treatable, right? You change emotional pain with the changing of your psyche or your mind. You change physical pain based upon medications or medicines. So I got to change my thinking about you. A lot of marriages that we meet with, when they're having problems, one of the things I ask them is what you think about each other. Not how you feel. What do you think? Because your thought process about your spouse has a lot to do with your feeling. You follow me? And so you perhaps need to renew your thinking about your spouse to be able to move forward in the relationship with your spouse. Does that make any sense?
And if you don't, then it becomes like a sore, infected.
Yeah.
So now you're infected, and it mutates, and it becomes like it gets worse because you're not dealing with that. So yeah, you're going to look at them and be like, ew, because you're not dealing with it.
And if you're not communicating it, and they want to have sex, no, it's not going to be enjoyable. You're going to be hating every bit of it because you psychologically are not there. You're not there emotionally either. So you need to talk to them about what's going on, if they've caused any of it. But more importantly, if you've allowed it to fester, you can't talk to them about stuff that happened 5 years ago because he's moved on. You still there, or vice versa. You understand what I'm saying? So anything. Listen to me, people of God. Women, y'all sit on stuff like a chicken sitting on eggs. You brood over that stuff for weeks and months. Then you bring it to us, and we have never known about it until you brought it to us. You've already had conversations with yourself. You've had conversations, and you had conversations thinking about what I would say. You've gone through a whole myriad. You've carried yourself through a whole myriad of scenarios before you ever come to me. So when you come to me, you already think you know what I'm going to say or respond to. So you're not coming for resolution. You're coming for confirmation of your emotional state. Do you understand what I'm saying? And when my reaction or my response is baffled, confused, and bewildered, then that makes you even more angry because I ain't got nothing to say. Well, baby doll, I've already said it in your head. You already spoke for me in your mind. You had a conversation with me and I wasn't even there. So it doesn't matter what I say because you already think what you think. So it doesn't matter. Does that make any sense to anybody? The devil plays in our head like that, stuff that we let fester, because once it festers, it begins to mutate and it becomes cancerous in your spirit. So when you communicate it, it comes out like death. And there is no resolution for it because you have a relationship with the pain. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, pertaining to sex in a marriage, you should not deny your husband or your wife. But I feel as though in marriage, sometimes you'll be like, well, you shouldn't deny your husband or your wife, but you have to stimulate a person, not just when you want sex. You have to be good, not every day. You know what I'm saying? You have to be good. You're taking out the trash, cooking, washing clothes, giving compliments. You can't just throw him or her on a chair and then be like, oh, he's showing affection or she's showing affection, she must just want sex now. You have to be sweet. Just because you're married, you can't just get complacent and think you don't have to do those things anymore. Because when my husband, I can speak with my husband, he's paying the mortgage, he's helping with the kids, he's giving me compliments, he's bringing me flowers. I'm like, oh okay. But if you ain't doing none of those things, or you ain't talking to her or talking to him, ain't nothing flourishing, ain't nothing gonna happen. But if you doing all those sweet little gestures, it makes it easier.
Yeah. And what's interesting, I was just reading a study the other day that women react three ways. Some women want those dynamics. Some women don't need those dynamics for sex, but some women do. It does matter, and I've always told the men this. It's hard for a woman to feel like having sex with you when she's asked you to cut the grass. Now, you might not relate those two things together, but for her, it does, because it validates who she is to you.
Right.
And if her word to you doesn't matter, then, Doc, it's hard for me to get in the mood to have sex with you, bro. And you wondering why you tapping her on her shoulder and she you sleep. She just, you were snoring like that a few seconds ago. but she can't get out of her head that you disrespect her by not honoring her desires. You know what I'm saying? And so that stuff matters to a woman. It really, really does. Amen. So that's good. And I think you have to have a lifestyle of being nice to each other. You need a lifestyle of being considerate to each other. We just mean. What are you so mean for? What are you so mad at? Well, but even before we get there, my God. What y'all mad at? If you be nice, your sex will be nice.
So the next question was, how does one initiate sex? How does one initiate sex?
But that goes back to what I said before. We need to have a conversation of how you like. Do you like the foreplay? Or do you like to be the Amazon where we just jump in the chair? Or how do we need to have a communication about how you like it. Because some men, for most men, we ready now. We in church. We ready. If my wife tapped me on my knee right now, put my finger up. Got to go. We ready now. But then there are some guys who like the foreplay. Some guys are artistic with theirs. They paint a picture. They tell a story with theirs. I said, bro, I ain't got all that time for the paint to dry. I got to go. but everybody's different. That's why you have to have a communication of what causes that stimulation.
And then it changes as you age.
That's true.
What I needed when I was 20, I don't need that now. Sit down, talk to me. Tell me what you're thinking in your mind. Now you'll be surprised at what you get. So that's important. How does one have sex passionately? I think through both people being there, present.
Yeah.
We've talked to people that one person is in the bed and the other person is at the mall. Like, both people have to be present in the moment.
Right.
That's when it becomes passion. Now, I do understand the pastor's taught that sometimes men just need it right then and there. It ain't going to be no foreplay. It ain't going to be nothing. And he going to get up and say, thank you, honey. Now, you might feel like slapping him in the middle of next week.
But you got to have that conversation, though, before you do that.
Yes.
Honey, I don't mean no harm. I really need something right now. I really need something. So you're not going to get anything out of this right now. I want you to know this before so don't go into this with no expectations.
Got off the drums. He'll never sit over here.
My man that got off the drums. But I'm serious. You got to have that conversation, because don't go into a sexual experience and the woman has an expectation of getting off, and you're the only one who got off. That's not fair. So let's have a conversation. This is about us. I need to get this real quick. Now, I promise you, the next time is going to be your day. Good news every day. The next time is going to be your time. But right now, I'm going through some things, and I just got to release some stuff. And we'll feel a whole lot better. We'll have a whole nother temperament. We'll be ready to take on the world. So,
and then the last one was, how does one initiate and enjoy infection? Not infection, affection. You ain't gonna enjoy infection. How does one initiate, enjoy affection? I think that goes with just enjoying your mate.
Yeah.
I think one other factor that we need to consider is just being friends. Enjoy being friends, and laughing, talking.
Yeah.
Like, that's what makes the relationship greater, when it's not about, because your head been out the clouds, So it's about just enjoying you being friends, being able to communicate, conversate, tell jokes, that type of thing. That's, to me, grows the affection.
Yeah, play games with each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, play
and
games with
beat
each other.
women, win. It's about winning. Okay.
She's so competitive.
You like it. Okay, go ahead.
Man.
Oh my God.
In answering this question, the latter questions can be answered with healing first, right? Because you led with healing and renewing your thoughts about your spouse. So I would imagine that's a process. So while going through that process of healing and renewing your mind as it relates to your spouse, to initiate sex, to have passionate sex, and initiate and enjoy affection, would you say just start doing it while you're going through the process? Like, don't think about how it's going to be, and even if you're doing it and you don't feel how you ideally would, just make a habit of doing it.
Yeah.
Okay.
The feelings will follow. They will follow. But you have to have a right attitude towards the situation. If your attitude is not right, then it's not going to ever come into alignment. Is this helping y'all today? Yes. All right.
How should one handle unmet expectations when they have been clearly communicated and both parties agree on what, how, and when, but only one person follows through?
I think you need to talk about why the expectation isn't being met. Like, there is something that's keeping the individual from meeting it. Is it too high? Right. We need to consider that. Can he meet it? Sometimes we agree to stuff that we really can't do.
Right.
And you have to be honest about it. I know we talked about it, but this is really hard. Like, I'm challenged in this area. And so let's bring it down to where I could perhaps meet it. And, if you keep the expectation there and y'all keep talking about it and you keep doing the same thing over and over again, then somebody's not being honest about meeting it, or that they can meet it. And so let's consider decreasing the expectation, modifying the expectation.
I would agree. I totally agree. But I think in the communication, though, we've got to be honest, man. If you're not going to be honest, don't even have no conversation. It's a waste of time. If you're not, especially if you're not intending to do anything better or different, to modify what's going on. Every problem in your marriage, in your relationship, is going to be solved by one solution: change.
Right.
And the question becomes, what are you willing to change or modify for the sake of the relationship? Period. Sean? No, it's dealing with reality.
It's reality. It's realistic.
It's reality. If I can't meet that expectation, I can't meet it. And that could be for any number of reasons, but that doesn't make me less of a person. I'm different than you are. You see what I'm saying? So respect the fact that I am not you. And if you can't live with what I cannot offer, then you might need to think about going somewhere else. You follow what I'm saying? I think the blessing of being married is that, especially in my marriage, that if I can't do certain things, I just tell her, I can't do that. I'm gonna try. And if I've learned through my trying that it ain't happening, and some changes you can come to a certain level, but I can't come all the way up, because That's just not in my DNA. You follow what I'm saying?
And I think sometimes we try to meet the expectation because our spouse is making us feel like we need to be superwoman or superman.
Right.
Baby, we are just human beings trying to live right and go to heaven. And so however we can walk through that process of getting there, that's what we do. Stop making your mate feel like they need to be this, that, or the other, or we done seen somebody doing this. So, I made that mistake a lot. My husband wasn't my father, but I was going to make him do what he did. And he was like, honey, I'm not going to be your father. That was your father. I'm your husband. And so we push our spouses into feeling like they need to be something because we see somebody else doing something.
And it makes them feel inadequate.
Yeah, sweep around your own door, honey.
It makes them feel less than a person because they're trying to meet your expectation. But you make them feel so bad for not meeting it, you could demoralize them.
Yeah.
And then they start losing who they are, and then they start blaming you because they start resenting you because I can't come up to your expectation, which makes me feel less than what I am. Then that creates bitterness in the relationship. Does that make any sense? And so whatever the expectations are, have an honest conversation about it. I can do this, I can do that, but I know I can't do that. I can do that a little bit. You follow me? But whatever you commit yourself to do, be man or woman enough to do it because your word is your bond. Yes, ma'am.
So when does it become settling?
It is not settling. Get that out your mind. It's me being me.
So just erase that period.
Yeah, that ain't even what settling is.
What is settling?
Settling is, see, here's the thing. This is who I am. So you're trying to tell me that you're settling? I'm settling because I'm telling you what I can or can't do?
Because that sets you up somewhere, somehow you feel like you're here.
Because to settle means it's an arrogant statement. To tell your husband, I'm settling for you. That's an arrogant statement. I can do better than you. Then why didn't you? You understand what I'm saying? Why didn't you do better than me? Because here's the part that most of us don't consider. The best does not start at the beginning of the marriage.
Right.
The best comes over the time and the process.
Yes.
I am a better version of Michael Green. I am not the same dude that my wife cheated on. Do you understand what I'm saying? And I'm not putting that out there like, I know it sounds kind of crass, but what I'm trying to make a point is that out of that situation, I had to change some things about myself to become a better version of myself for the benefit of her and the relationship. She didn't get this 20-year me at the first year. You understand what I'm saying? We make people reach standards and heights. And as a female, how can you? We're different. We're different. As a man, I'm different than a woman. You can't put that expectation. You ain't never been no man. You don't know what a man is.
Right.
And I think that's where the problem comes. You have a thing in your head about what a man is to you, but you don't know what no man is. And a man don't know what a woman is. So if that's the case, then how do I know when I got one? How do I know that I am being one? You follow what I'm saying? We just got a lot of stuff we've always had in our head. Preconceived notions. We've created these pretenses that we get into these relationships, and when they're not that, then you start looking for something that is that. Yes, ma'am.
It's often said, like, when you're single, don't settle. Mm-hmm. So are you saying it's okay then to have, like, to know your worth and have a standard, but once you decide to say I do to someone and you're in the marriage context, settle is no longer a thing?
But see, that needs to be determined before you even get married.
Yeah, which is what you're saying.
It's okay to have standards, all right? But your standards got to be realistic.
And once you say I do, y'all work together to be greater.
Right.
You can't settle if you're married because you're married.
Yeah, you grow.
Yeah,
you grow.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Can we just clarify the question? Because expectations, so for me, I don't expect my husband to come home 2 o'clock in the morning. So when we say expectations and we're saying that, we can't sit down and have a conversation if he says, well, I can't not come home earlier than 3 a.m., I'm not going to be like, okay, well, that's fine. But in marriage, there are some, I think, black and white expectations. Can you touch on those? Like, I'm not going to keep lying. I'm not going to keep cheating. I'm not going to, because that got kind of gray.
Now you're talking about character.
But if I expect those things, so let's say, I'm coming home 3 a.m. and we have a conversation, that's a problem. But you still coming home 3 a.m. and you're like, well, I can't come home earlier than 2, so.
But I guess the question then becomes why?
Right.
Let's talk about why. Not the fact that you're coming at 3 o'clock. Why can't you come home before 3 o'clock? Especially if you said you would.
That's just right.
Yeah, no. Well, if that's who you are, you married me this way. You understand what I'm saying? You married. There's some things I have to accept about my wife that just not gonna change. You follow what I'm saying? And after 20 years, I'm okay with that. Do you understand? Because why would I expect something that ain't gonna be?
But there are some things that you don't discover until you live with that person.
There you go. There you go.
So it gets,
so what do you?
Gray.
But here it is. What are you gonna do now that you know it?
Right. So that's why I'm saying. So with this question,
you do nothing.
Come on, man.
You do what? No, really. Look at it. I know you want something to be done.
Yes.
But nothing will be done.
But the mindset of, okay, so this is just what it is.
Yes. This is just what it is.
Okay.
Now that's not. Now don't make that one point the totality of the whole marriage. Because we can preoccupy ourselves with one point that he's not moving. You follow what I'm saying? We can maximize that one point and cause it to be a shade over the whole thing of the individual. And that's not fair to that person because he's more than that 3 o'clock situation.
What if that's a big thing to that person though?
Then there's a modification that needs to be had because he can't be what you want him to be in that regard. Here it is. You can't make this carpet black. It's blue. To come here tomorrow and expect it to be black would be ridiculous. Do you understand what I'm saying? The other, you crazy. The other thing about it is, you trying to force something to be that can't be is controlling. And manipulative if you're trying to convince him that he needs to. And I'm telling you, I can't do it. I just can't. And my reason for not doing it is valid. Yeah. I'm going with the argument. Because if I can't come at 2:30 and you won't, and I keep coming at 3 o'clock and I got a valid reason, then you got to accept that. If I don't have a valid reason, we got to have a conversation.
Who determines it to be valid?
Oh, that's a good question.
I have a good question.
That's a good question. Here it is. Are you mature enough to determine that it's valid? Because it depends on what you see. What I'm saying? See what I'm saying? Yeah. And I know we got to go, but you got to get this, man. We are killing the whole relationship behind one thing.
That's good. That is good.
It is a small percentage, and you're forgetting the other parts.
Sheila, and then Ryan, and then Carlin.
Yeah.
Sheila, and then Ryan. That's okay.
So my question is, what if the person has multiple points? You know what I mean? So I guess what if there's multiple things that are not meeting your expectation? And then what, even if you lower your expectations to kind of meet in the middle, but even then, so it's like, how do you do life and be in relationship with this person as they're pretty much going through their process? Like, how does that look like on a day-to-day?
Patience. You got to be patient with their process because they're being patient with yours. It goes back to what I said earlier. You might have a problem with your failed expectation. Do you know how many failed expectations I have of you? We keep forgetting the other part of this, as if you acting like you meeting every expectation in the marriage, and you are not. I just don't say nothing. Do you understand what I'm saying? And the same mercy, and I think for men, the same mercy we give to you is the same mercy we expect, but we don't get that. Because we don't say what bothers us as much as you say what bothers you. Because of our difference. Men are different than women. And how we process stuff is different. So there's certain things we live with that you are like, I ain't living with this.
But what if you're consistently asking what's going on and then that person does not share?
Then you got to act. Then you need to move from what's going on to finding out why they're not sharing, because that's the real problem.
Yeah. So even if you ask that question and you
got to find out. Then you need to go to counseling to find out why that man ain't sharing with you. Because most of the time, when men are not sharing with their wife, one, their wife doesn't know how to respond, or they're made to feel less than, or they don't trust you with their truth. That's the reality of it. Because we're penalized for telling you the truth about what we think about you.
And sometimes we can never get to that because the argument escalates before we can ever get out what we really feel.
And please don't take that I'm fussing. I'm just very animated.
Yeah, we're very passionate about this. Ryan?
Thank you, sweetie.
Going back to the one previous to it, and I know not staying there, but just to elaborate on a little bit to the point where why are you coming in at 3 a.m. you can't come in at 2. I know my husband is a DJ, and so he'll be out all hours, and I got to an idea in my head like, well, the clock, by 1 o'clock, last call, everything should be shutting down and you should be in the house. I don't understand why you walking in here at 4. And then finally he was like, well, come out with me. And when I went out, and I'm looking at the clock, and it's 5 o'clock, and he just packing up and breaking down. And so it just answered the question. If there's an ongoing problem, and hopefully everybody is open, then like, well, let me go with you then. Because if what you doing is okay, then it shouldn't be a problem with me going. And at that moment, my husband told me, there is never anywhere I'm going that you can't go. If you choose not to go, then that's on you, but don't ask me nothing else about it. And so when I went, I got my answer. But then we had the same problem, vice versa. At church, we can hang out, especially back in the day when everyone was a little bit younger. We'll be here 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And there was a time we were here literally till like 3 something in the morning. And this was early in our marriage, and my husband was blowing me up because he was like, there is no way that you're at this church 2, 3 o'clock in their morning. It's no way. Like,
praying, Melvin.
He just was like, there's no way. I don't believe you. Like, there's no way. Something else has to be happening. And that came from the culture, because he never dated a female that was so involved in church and so involved in ministry. So, the culture he came from is nothing that a woman is doing outside her doors after 12 midnight, period. That is good. Right. And so then one day he finally started to engage more, and he was out with the men at a church service one night. And he came home immediately explaining himself, but it came from a place where, like, basically, I'm sorry. He was like, we were talking, and I looked up, and it was 2 o'clock in the morning. I mean, he sat back for about a good 45 minutes just explaining to me, like, I don't understand how we were there for 45 minutes, but now I get it. And so in that process, taming my tongue, it was a lot of arguments, because I'm like, I'm at church. But it's like, I don't believe you. So, okay, well, come. So I think the 3 o'clock in the morning answer would be, well, go with me. Because if you tell me I can't go somewhere with you, then that's the immediate problem.
Yeah, right.
But like he said, if you choose not to engage in my world, then don't come to me with nothing no more, because I've already opened the door.
Because that's a sign of, really, it's an insecurity, it sounds to me. My wife can go out with her girlfriends. I'll call to see if she's good, but not for her to come home. That's because I'm not concerned if she's out with some other dude, or I'm concerned. If it gets to that level, and I'm not saying it's okay to be out late, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is a lot of the challenges that we're having with people in our relationships is our insecurities. It's really our insecurities. And you got to be careful that your expectation of people in the relationship is not authored by your insecurity. Because how valid is your expectation? I saw, Colin?
If I believe if you're not working or, like that, you can't come. I'm not controlling, but if you can't just hang out at 3 o'clock in the morning, I believe it's a respect thing. I mean, if you can hang
if
with
that's your house, if that's what
it's
you
a respect
want,
thing, you can't just, if you're not working or something not going on or you're not hanging out with your boys, not no everyday thing, but I believe it's a respect thing. I believe if you are married and you know something, even in a relationship, hurt the person, you should do like you would do on your job when you want a promotion. You put in it. If you want respect, you have to give respect. Absolutely. And you got to treat that person how you want to be treated. You can't just say, oh, I'm the woman or I'm the man. You got to, give to the relationship. You got to, participate in the relationship in order for it to work. You can't just say, this is me, and I'm going to accept it because it's going to fall. Anything worth having, you have to work for it. Like on your job, when you want a promotion, you do it. You work for it. That's just like home. You tame your tongue with your boss. Tame your tongue with your wife and your husband.
Right.
Sometimes we're nicer to outside people than the people we live with.
That's true.
So
because of incentives.
Exactly. So we know how to treat other people. We should be more, talking to myself too, able to treat the people that we home with.
Absolutely.
And I just want to feel like if you keep rolling in at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, if you ain't working, see how long that worked for you.
And I want to say something to her, that point right there. That's her house. That's her house. You follow what I'm saying? My wife, sometimes I don't come home till 3 or 4 in the morning because I'm out hanging out with preacher friends. We laughing and joking or whatever. Because I can't do it during the course of the day because I'm working all day. So if after a service we want to go chop it up and catch up, we might be out till 3 or 4 in the morning. Yeah, that's my house. Do you understand? And that's what I'm saying. That's the part that has to be clear, because even in hanging out with people, I see some of my boys be like, yo, I got to dip. Because I got to go home. I don't joke him because he got to go home, because that's his house. You see what I'm saying? However your agreement is in your house, that's the culture of your house. You see what I'm saying? We not preaching that you did. No. You got to do what works in your marriage. I'm sorry, what, Sean? You good? Okay. What?
Yeah, 2 more.
We just got 2 more and we done.
How does one overcome shutting down when your spouse wants to communicate an issue?
Wow. Why are you shutting down?
That's the question.
Why are you shutting down? You see what I'm saying? You got to answer that question. Before this answer can be made or satisfied, you got to find out, why am I shutting down? Because that has something to do with you. Does that make sense? Honey, did you want to?
I totally agree. You have to answer
One question before you answer the other question. And there's a plethora of answers. That could be the reason why you're shutting down. And so we got to get there before we get to the issue at hand.
Right.
You can't deal with the issue.
Absolutely.
The last one.
Who has the final say?
My God.
That's the one.
My God. Some of y'all ain't gonna like this, Saint.
There is only one head in the house, and that is the man. And God is going to hold him accountable to whatever happens in that house, no matter whether you like it or not. God's going to judge him. God holds him responsible. Just like in this house, the Bible says in Hebrews 13 that when I die, I got to stand before God and give an answer for every member who is in this church. You don't, I do. Because I'm the head and I'm the responsible one. Your job is to help, assist, counsel, advise, give me your perspective on the situation. After which we have a determination of what we're going to do. The decision is always going to be mine. Now, at the end of the day, I may have made a mistake and it doesn't go the way I thought it would go. You still got to be submitted to the consequence of the mistake I made, because I am still the leader, even though I made a mistake. Yeah, boy, these women in here cringing now. Because here's the thing. Your boss, you don't have a problem with your boss making decisions.
And he gonna make the decision.
And he gonna make the decision.
Yes.
He might have a meeting to find out what's the direction, what y'all got to contribute. But after that meeting is over, that is no longer in your hands. It is in the hand of the person who's the department head or the boss of that business. Same thing with your marriage. God set it up that man is the head. You are the body. You are the ability. You are the ability. He is the authority. You don't have the authority he has, even though you are co-equal.
That's right.
You're co-regent. That's the way God created you. But only one mouth is in that whole situation. All right. Somebody had a question.
And God knew. He knew that. He knew you was going to have some answers or would want to have the last say. That's why he had to create an order.
Submission.
He had to.
Yes, ma'am.
I thought you're supposed to follow him as he followed Christ. What if he's not? What if it's not a? What if you know he is not good for the family? You don't say nothing.
No, I said you have to counsel and advise and give wisdom, but at the end of that, he still makes the choice. And here's the thing: if your husband ain't saved, he's still the head in the mind of God.
That's right.
He's still the head. If you read 1 Corinthians 7, he said, if it pleases you to be married to an unbeliever, understand that man is still the head, because that's the order that God established. This ain't nothing to do with church. This has to do with life. We got to stop treating the Bible like it's a book only for church. It is a book of life.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
You see what I'm saying? Because there's only going to be one head and one body. You are the body, and in the body there is only one sense, feeling. In the head, sight, vision, hearing, faith, tongue, prophetic, and the nose that senses where to go. That God put all of that responsibility in that man. But the helpmeet, and we'll deal with this because we got more questions. We'll continue this on Wednesday night. But the function of the helpmeet is to help me determine the best way that we need to go. Now, after we've counseled and talked, at the end of the day, the decision is still mine. Yes, ma'am.
Bringing this all together. So, ideally, the husband would be submitted to God.
Yes.
But we don't live in an ideal world. So what you're saying, even if he's not, and the wife believes that, you know, he's not hearing from God, blah, 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 it is still her responsibility to go with whatever he says, trusting that God, even if it's a decision that will negatively impact the family, that God will handle that.
Yeah. What you ought to be doing is praying.
Okay.
That God would touch his heart and give him wisdom. That's what you ought to be doing. Because see, this principle still lies that even if he's not saved, you are helpmeet. So I need to have some conversation about whatever it is we're about to decide on. You see what I'm saying? We still need to talk. You follow me? And so once we have our conversation, the same thing whether he's saved or not. After we have our conversation, once he makes the decision, now the consequence is ours.
So under no circumstance should a woman do something her husband has said no to.
No circumstance. Because then you're in rebellion. Now, because real talk, and that's a good question, because now you're in rebellion. And your rebellion is not only against your husband, it's against God.
I will not buy a dog. Okay. I have resolved.
No. But that's real talk. Because a lot of women don't understand. See, God don't care if you believe him or not.
Wow. Yeah.
He's still God. That ain't gonna change him being God. You ain't got to trust his word at all. But that don't mean his word ain't true. You see what I'm saying? What we want to do is live with God situationally. You see what I'm saying? So based upon the situation, that's how we're going to relate with God. And God's like, no. It's my way or no way. If you're going to come do it the way I want it done, it's going to benefit you.
Right.
My way benefits you. But because you have so much control issues and you don't trust me, you still fighting against my way. So your yes is superficial. You ain't said yes yet. If your wrestling is God's choice, I didn't choose. You're right, you didn't choose that. He chose to make you, period. Do you understand what I'm saying? When you start trusting his path for your life and stop trusting yourself, and watch this, stop comparing your wisdom with his. There is no comparison.
Jesus.
My thoughts are higher than your thoughts. My ways are higher than your ways. I know stuff from my vantage point about you. You don't know about you. You can't even deal with you. When I was going through suicidal thoughts and stuff, God said, this is why I can't leave you to yourself. Because then you go off into suicidal thinking. You get depressed when I leave you to yourself.
Yeah.
That's why you need my word to get in your spirit so that I can curtail all of the foolishness you have created for yourself. My wisdom is perfect. Yours is not. In fact, yours ain't even wisdom because it ain't been proven.
Wow.
You are experimenting with life.
Yeah.
I am life. Y'all, we can take this here offer.
I like it.
Did you hear what I said? You are treating life like an experiment. You're trying this and trying that. And God says, I know the way that you need to go because I made you. Right? I chose you to be who you are. I chose the color of your skin, the height that you have. All of that is specific to why I created you. Are y'all hearing what I'm saying? Trust me. I made you black in America. Some folk wish they was white.
Come on.
But you don't want to be white in America. Because who you're meant to be, you could not have that color to be it. God needed you black to fulfill your purpose.
My God.
All of that stuff is important. Huh? Yes, ma'am.
Would a woman still be out of order if the husband says no, so she doesn't do that thing?
I'm sorry, say it again.
Would a woman still be out of order if her husband says no, so she doesn't do that thing, but her demeanor and basically how you say you can penalize a person for something,
yes.
Would she still be out of order, even though she didn't do the thing, but the way
Yes.
she's treated? Okay.
Yes, because now you are penalizing them for their decision that you didn't agree with, which is really disagreement. Because how can two walk together except they be agreed, right? So you're not going anywhere because you're stuck at the point of not getting the dog. So that affects the rest of the marriage.
I'm not stuck, guys.
No, but that affects the rest of the marriage because that's how you're going to treat everything you don't get a chance to do. God is a God of order. You got to trust his order. Even when your husband isn't trusting God. Oh, Jesus. That is when you've got to be praying for his salvation, not just for your benefit, but for the benefit of God. And when he gets saved, because he will get saved, when he gives his life to God for real, do not come between him and God. Because then God will move you. See, we don't read this book, so we don't know this God. Y'all hear me? Were y'all blessed by this tonight?